Hello everyone, this is a triple triad video, so if you're here for the chess, this is the right time to tune out. This is going to be a new fake triad wars with Turdz taking on the world. So what is it? Turdz is, as I think most people watching this will know, one of the great triple triad players. He won the tournament Vincent. He's made multiple other semifinals, a bunch of quarterfinals. Every time I try to put together a rankings, I have him somewhere in the vicinity of 15th best all time. He also has some other claims to fame in Triple Triad, like Triple Triad Network. He's the second most decorated player ever, having won, I think, 3 tournaments, only behind Delial. He's way up there across the board. And what he did was he played in a fake tournament, not with other human competitors, against these AIs I've constructed. And I think the AIs are pretty good. Some of them are terrible. They level up to being, I think, very good. And I think they're interesting opponents. I think I've figured out different things for them to value such that they play in different ways and give, interesting real games. This is not like playing FF8's AI where you just go in the top left corner, it takes you, you take back, and you've locked in a card and go from there. These are not AIs that are exploitable in the same way. If they are exploitable, it would take a lot more figuring out and be much more complex to pull off. Now, these AIs are very beatable, but when I say exploitable, I mean like doing the same move types every time will just slaughter them. Probably shouldn't work here. I would love it if more people wanted to play in tournaments. I'd love to run some tournaments where, there are, 8 humans in it and then 56 AI filling the other slots. I think the AIs are going to be competitive and interesting. I think we could have some really cool tournaments. We could do stuff where, 8 different players are in each of the 8 brackets and they all have the same opponents, or we could randomize it. But you can, do a lot of things once you have reasonable strength, interesting AIs you can play against to fill out slots in a tournament. Now, I only built them to play with essentially all rules, not including elemental. They can handle randoms pretty well. I have not tested them with same plus combo or closed, though I would like to work in that direction. They definitely aren't built to play like plus plus wall combo or weird sets like that, though they might be able to handle it. I haven't tried them on it. So I haven't actually built the AIs. I have a friend who's helping me with some AI stuff. I have not put them together in a way that has translated into them making the moves, but they have a list of rules they follow, and I follow the rules and put in the move and would send them to Turdz, and he would tell me his move, and I'd put that in the picture and send it back. He didn't time himself, but he tended to take 3 to 5 minutes a move and occasionally went up to 9. We don't know exactly, but the kind of integrity of tournament play, I think, was preserved here, where his moves were under normal tournament time constraints. Again, I would love if more people are interested in playing in tournaments like this. I think this was a lot of fun. The games were interesting. What we're going to go do here is something that never really got to happen, which was go over all the games a really good player played in a tournament and discuss at each point what was going on, read you his commentary, give you some of my thoughts, and see where we go. And I hope it's interesting. So as you can see on the right, we have the first part of the bracket. I didn't show the next round or anything because that would be spoiling who advances. But, this is the Turdz part of the bracket. I named each of the characters after RPG characters. That felt in track with what Triple Triad Advanced did, where lots of players named themselves after characters from various RPGs, usually Final Fantasy. Each of the 63 AI in the tournament is unique. Turdz is the 64th player. Sometimes these differences are quite small. I'll have here is a type of AI. I have 6 or so different types. And then within them, there's lots of reasons they could have slight differences here and there. So the difference between type 1, let's say, AI and type 2 AI is quite large, but there could be 2 type 1 AIs that are pretty similar, and there could be 2 that are pretty distinct. So it's going to vary a bunch. Each round's opponent is supposed to be tougher than the last. So Turdz faces Luca Blight in the first round. If he advances, he will continually face what I think are harder and harder opponents. Now, sometimes, of course, your hand lines up or you play really well and you win quicker. Obviously, a tougher opponent does not make necessarily for a longer or more difficult match. And also, I may have failed to set the difficulties of some higher. It may be that I thought some AIs were better than they in fact were. Just putting out all the information, not trying to spoil anything here. The AI will always have the red cards on the left. Turdz will always have the blue cards on the right. So it won't label who's playing which side, but you'll always know Turdz is blue on the right. And we have our first round rule set, which is levels 3 and 4, same plus wall combo, max 2 7/6s. So Turdz says, first game I decided to prioritize 6s and 7s and as best as possible to cover off the majority of possible 6/7s the opponents could play. While not perfect, my hand could deal with most things. I just want to add, if I was looking at this rule set, I would think, okay, at level 4, 7/6/3/2s are kind of the default power card. The next most powerful card is probably, if I can't have more 7/6s, the 6/6/3/2s. There might be an argument for going with 7/5/5/2s. Those are weaker, but if you can get some good synergy going. But the 5/5/2 part primarily plays against 7s, and if the opponent thinks like me and runs a lot of 6/6s rather than more 7s, then maybe you actually want 7/5/5/1s if you're going to go in that direction. But I think if we see the hands, Turdz is of course on the right, you'll see he went for these 7/6/3/2s and then these 6/6/3/2s or 3/3 or 2/2. I probably would have overloaded more on 6/6/3/2s, but this is totally reasonable. Turdz thought about his opponent, his hand. My first impression of my opponent's hand was they wanted to prioritize maximizing having 7s over having plus wall power, although the 3/6/3/6 is a useful utility card for that. 7/6/5/1s do have some value, but overall are not as useful as 7/6/3/2s, 7/6/4/2s, or 7/6/4/3 types, instead prioritizing raw power. This is correct. Those cards all have significantly more plus wall potential. So on the left, you can see it lists his opponent, Luca Blight from Suikoden, or Suikoden. I always say Suikoden, but I think it's pronounced Suikoden. Not a series I've ever delved much into. It. For some reason, the only one I ever played was 4, which everyone hates. I know 2 is very popular. Never appealed to me, so the Luca Blight AI is not one of the better AIs. So this is the first of these tournaments. I hope to have more. Maybe only Turdz will play, but maybe I can get some of you viewers to play too. This is round 1, and this is the first game of the match, and Luca Blight has first turn. So will it go to the next slide? This is always the question. There we go. So Turdz says, I thought this was quite an unusual starter. Maybe they saw I couldn't directly capture it from 3, and so they thought leading me to go in 9 would give them 2, 5, 5, 7, and 3, which I actually couldn't deal with. This is true, 2, 5, 5, 7 has a recapture in 3, and is also going to be safe from Turdz's hand. Usually, when presented with this type of starter, which can be effective even if directly capturable from 5, I'd look at opposite corners. However, the natural moves for me didn't look great, as his responses could leave me with 5s open, which my hand didn't deal very well with. It's very slow going to the next slides, I apologize. So I decided instead to defend in 3. He had no direct capture here, and while he could play in 1 to set something up, I would be able to easily block in 2, also securing 3. I had multiple options for 2, regardless of his next move, which I could also deal with any potential response in 9. Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add there. I'm going to pause a bunch and say if I have things to add, but I think this game there's not going to be much for me to say that isn't completely covered by Turdz's comments. Quote, so he played a high outfacing number in 9. Seems sensible, but rather predictable. Generally, the securing move in 2 is the more favorable in most cases, but I considered going on the offensive here and playing an 8, as that would leave no captures in 7. I played a few scenarios out, looking at potential replies in all spots, and didn't see anything too worrying as long as I was careful, so decided to go with it. From Luca Blight's perspective, if they were gonna play a 9, playing a card vulnerable to a plus wall obviously seems just allowing Turdz to lock into cards more easily than he should. So if he was going to play a 9, I think 3/6/3/6 would be a tougher move to deal with. The only way Turdz could take it with 6, 7, 2, 3, and 8 can be plussed back. So Turdz in that spot probably would have replied in 2, as he alluded to in his comments here. But I do think if you're going to play a 9 here, rather than just going with what has the highest outfacing value, it makes more sense to go for the thing that is trickiest for them to capture, which of course is not always the highest outfacing value. This is, of course, nothing too deep for anyone, but I think this move is quite obviously bad, but thinking about why can be useful. So Turdz says, I liked the look of this position a lot and felt like I had a ready-made response to any position. I could respond to anything in 7 with 5, 5 with either 7 or 2, depending on the card, 2 with 5, 1 with 2, as long as I kept the 6, 7, 2, 3. One move that I had to think about was 1, 6, 7, 5, and 4, but I could also block this with 6, 7, 2, 3, and 5. I felt in a good place. So let's look at 1, 6, 7, 5, and 4. So the idea of that is it sets up this plus and 5 with 7, 6, 5, 1, because 6 plus 1 equals 2 plus 5, and that might threaten some things, but he can block 5 there. And so, okay, let's play that out. So they play 1, 6, 7, 5, and 4. He blocks with 6, 7, 2, 3, and 5. That's going to put him up 7, 3 because he's flipping the card in 6. They're going to presumably play 7, 6, 5, 1, and 7. That's going to flip one card back. He's still going to be up 6, 4, and he's going to close it out by blocking 2. All right, yeah, that definitely looks like a win. So he played in 5. Again, we're going back to Turd's commentary, capturing and setting up a same on the card in 3. However, in doing so, he gave up all upward power in the hand, and already I knew he couldn't capture 6s to the left, so blocking 2 was obvious. I think this is the only win in the position. I think if you go in 7, red both has the option to go in 2, but also more often they can just go in 4 and capture the card in 7. And because the score will be 5-5 and the 3-6, 3-6 is pretty good at closing out that top row, that will be enough to manage a tie. So I think Turdz' move here in 2 is the only winning move here. By this point, the game was clearly won, and the lack of cohesion in their hand meant that regardless of what they played, I could safely plus wall or brute force capture 2 cards safely. So I hope it's not confusing if I don't say Turdz is speaking every time. I remember I was taking a philosophy class in high school, and someone reading a paper kept saying, and now I quote before reading a quote. And the teacher said, no, you don't have to do that. Your voice obviously changes when you're quoting in a way we can easily interpret, so you don't have to announce your quoting every time because your voice just changes. So hopefully I can get away with that. If that's confusing, I apologize. But yeah, so one thing here is with the last few moves of the game, we didn't actually play them out. We assumed we could calculate them, and we're doing so correctly. So Luca plays in 1, and Turdz can reply, for instance, 6, 7, 2, 3, and 4, or that same card in 7, or 2, 6, 6, 2, and 4. So lots of wins here. And Turdz closes out the first game. His commentary on it is, I feel like my opponent's hand didn't fit very well together despite the insistence on high numbers. I was surprised by there being 4 7s, but not 1 in each direction. Despite having 2 cards with the same number combo, 7, 6, 5, 1, they didn't really play well off each other, nor deal with walls particularly well. I also don't think their starters set them up well for the rest of the game. Aside from some careful considerations about their responses to my second move, this felt like quite a routine and easy win. And yeah, I think it was. I think the Luca Blight AI was very weak here. Made a poor hand, made poor moves. I do think Turdz had to show some precision, which shows how hard Triple Triad can be. For instance, there was only the 1 win in 2, but with just 4 moves left, that's pretty findable, and it was a pretty straightforward move. So yeah, I think this was a routine win for someone of Turdz's level, and shows kind of the lower end of the AIs I constructed as, not a particularly strong opponent. But don't worry, if you thought this is a garbage game, this is just a good player stomping a bad one, well, I think we'll have better for you. And hopefully that will begin in the next round, which I'm going to cover in this video. So let's keep going. So we're on to round 2. So you can see the bracket increase. I won't spoil, does Turdz win the whole tournament? Does he go out this round? Does he go out next round? But we move on to the second round, and we're going to face Bugenhagen from FF7, the wise old man in Cosmo Canyon. You'll see Barrett beat Fujin, various other people advanced. We'll see the bracket grow each round as we see who advances. So the rule set is 1 through 5, same plus wall combo, and the total level of your 5 cards has to be 15. So Turdz says, this was an interesting and challenging rule set. I initially felt the best way to play this was to choose 1 card per level, and then sought out powerful cards on each level while attempting to balance out strength in all directions. I admit to being caught slightly unawares by the opponent, instead choosing to go with 2 level 5s, a level 3, and 2 level 1s, but this was a sensible interpretation. I also thought they had a generally good hand, although I thought the 3-1-4-5 was a bit of a weaker card. I did think I'd have to up my game from the start, though, as overall they probably had the better hand here. So I should show you the hands, given that his commentary is about them. Their hands on the left, his hands on the right. For me, thinking about this rule set, I was wondering, so if you think the jump from each level is approximately equivalent, like the difference between a level 1, a level 2, and a level 2 and a level 3 are pretty similar, then you could start building a hand like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, one of each level. But if you remember when people played Triple Triad, they often paired level 3 and 4. Level 3 cards, 6, 6, 3, 2s, could fight pretty well against level 4 hands and were regularly seen in level 4 hands. But level 4 cards don't get played with once level 5 is included. Level 1 and 2 were often paired. There's not that big a jump there, but there is a big jump between 2 and 3 and between 4 and 5. And what I think that means is there's a lot of value in not playing level 2 cards and not playing level 4 cards, because at the cost of just one extra point, you're improving the card substantially. Or if you spend 1 point, right, or if you save 1 point, you go down a level. If you go down from 2 to 1 or down from 4 to 3, you're not losing that much value, and you're saving a level that can be used elsewhere. So I think the strategy should probably be to avoid level 2s and 4s here. And so I think in general, Bugenhagen makes some better hand choices in this first game, or at least one's more appealing to me, because I would be trying to run, and maybe you think there's a big jump of 2s over 1s or 4s over 3s, but I think 5s are very powerful. I would be trying to run as many as I could, and the only way you can run 2 5s is if you go 2 5s, 2 level 2s and a level 1, or 2 5s, a 3 and 2 level 1s. And I think 3 is a big jump over 2. So I would probably go 5-5, 3-1-1, which is what Bugenhagen did here. So Turdz says, I had a few starter ideas in mind, but none of them really seemed to work against the hand I was presented with, so I ended up with the classic, throw the weakest card in the middle, which was commonly effective in these mixed level sets, and I saw I could play off it quite well with my other cards. Generally, I didn't play many 5 starters in open, much more commonly in closed, but here it nicely took some power away from the opponent's 7/7s by ensuring I had a way of capturing them in their natural corners from all sides. So yeah, Turdz's hand is actually very nicely built to deal with the 7/7s, right? Roman Gold Coin, kind of an auto-include for a lot of people whenever level 2 is included. Very powerful card, the 6-2-5-3, is very good at dealing with both the 7/7 corners in their natural corners. It covers, the 1 and 1 from 4 and the 1 and 9 from 6. And this also sets up, the hand itself naturally has some captures on the others, right? The 4-1-7-7 can capture the 4-7-7-2 if it goes in 1, and the 6-7-4-2 can capture the 7-1-4-7 if it goes in 9 from 8. So he's really well set up for that. This further sets him up pretty well against, say, the 6-6-3-2 in 7, right? It gives 6-7-4-2 a plus in 8, and it gives 3-6-6-2 a same in 4. So I think overall, if you look at this looks like a pretty good starter to me. Blue is very well set to handle red's natural corners, and I think especially on first turn in these mixed level rule sets, it is very useful to get the weakest cards out of your hand first. Second turn will not have to play all their cards, right? If they have a level 1 sitting in their hand at the end of the game, that's fine. But first turn will have to use all their cards, and it can be really terrible to be left with a level 1 at the end that just has no equity. So I like the idea in general of using these cards. And on these rule sets, I would tend to either drop something in the center, like Turdz did here, or play a weak corner that I thought directed the game nicely for my hand or uncomfortably for theirs. So he played a 7/7 in the corner as expected. Now wasn't the time to look at capturing with the level 1s, having nice plus walls on both sides. So the natural moves to consider from here first are in 1, 2, and 4. I wanted to keep hold of the 4-1-7-7 as having the only strong power to the left. So from there, considered which card I least needed to keep, which I thought was the 3-6-6-2 in this position, and looked to see if there was anywhere it would nicely fit, and found what I thought was a good move at the time. So my instinct here would be to get Roman Gold Coin out of my hand as the least useful card. But he's right, that's the only thing that has a capture in 6, so you don't want to spend that. So then you move to the higher level, the 3-6-6-2 is going to be the next least valuable card, and one that doesn't have any captures on board, and looking for where it fits in 1, 2, and 4. Yeah, I'm totally on board with Turdz's reasoning here. And I think this move makes a lot of sense. So I want to talk actually a little about the next move on my own, because I think it's pretty interesting. Okay, so yeah, so he has more commentary first, actually. 3, 6, 6, 2, and 2 served a good purpose here, as it made the common replies quite difficult and didn't require many cards to achieve this. For example, anything played in 3 or 6 could be met by 4, 1, 7, 7 in the other spot. While anything in 1 could be met by 6, 2, 5, 3 or 6, 7, 4, 2. 8 could also be met by 6, 7, 4, 2 later in the game, taking care to avoid 4, 7, 7, 2, and 4, which would combo it. I did see a move that may have led to a tie in one of those spots, and there may well have been many, but this did look like a reasonably strong position. So Turdz and I have come to start calling these setups a J setup. Maybe easier to see if the card in 9 was instead in 7. But I think one of the ways to just make this tricky is if the opponent has no safe squares to go, right? If they can't put a card safely in 1, or a card safely in 3, or a card safely in 8, they can be very tricky to find good moves for the second turn player. And I personally think I'm pretty bad at defending these kinds of positions. If you give me a J setup with no clear where to go, like no clear, oh, that's safe, or there I can go, and if you take me, I combo back, that looks pretty good, then I often get lost in these positions, and especially as I was getting weaker in the later years of my tournament play, I think I really struggled to defend these positions. And I think if you were specifically trying to exploit me, playing starters in 5 and aiming for these kinds of setups would be an effective way to do so. At some point, I may put in the effort to be better at defending them. But I think Bugenhagen makes a really fascinating move here, which is 4, 7, 7, 2, and 7. So I think there is a certain type of aggressive player that would look at 7 here, looking, I want to set up as many combos as I can. I don't mind that you have a potentially safe or secure square in 8, but I just want to set up as much combo potential as I can. The only square I can go diagonally from another card on the board and set up combos is 7. So I'm going to look at 7 as a combo setting up square. And occasionally it has value there, though I tend not to really trust that version of this move. But I want to talk about this move at more like a structural level, which is that often, say red had gone in 8 instead. Where could blue go? Well, they often go in 7 and set up a T, and as I think most of us know, Ts can be very dangerous, and the first turn player has really good winning chances. They could also go in 1 and set up a Z. And so they have these two options where potentially any of their cards might be good, and they have these two just really dangerous options. And if you play an 8, even if it's safe, the T might still be really dangerous, the Z might be really dangerous, and here there was no safety there to be found. And the same thing if you look at moves in 1, right? If you play in 1, the opponent could go in 8 and set up a Z, they could occasionally go 3, they could go in 4 and set up a Q. There's all these like strong formational options against the natural moves. And so one thing I think is really interesting about a move in 7 is it sort of forces the opponent to occupy 8. If they don't occupy 8, then you will, and you'll have a really nice square in 8 for yourself. And if they do go 8, they do get a T, but you only have to calculate one line. And that can be really useful when it's this far out and it's hard to calculate to the end of the game, is can I make a move that forces them to have to go in this square? Because if I can survive that, then I'm doing okay, right? Well, if I go in 8 here, I have to calculate so many more potential replies. And so I think just from a kind of pragmatic level, this move in 7 is a really interesting concept of force the reply in 8. And if you can survive the T, you're in great shape, but you only need to survive the T. You don't need to survive any Zs. You don't need to survive any Qs as well. They have one good option against you, but it's only one. So, okay, Turdz commentary. Wow, okay, I didn't see that coming. My first thought was that I should be able to find a win from here, but I kept coming unstuck by the 3, 1, 4, 5, and 3 plus wall that I'd given them. On reviewing the game, I've tried to find a win again, but keep only seeing ties and some possible losses. In a position like this, with an unusual formation, I try to find a safe tie early on, which I feel I did, then spend the rest of the time looking for a winner. If I don't see a clear winner, and potential for miscalculation is high, I'll stick with the safe tie. This is good practice, and I don't believe there is a win here. If someone can find it, I would be impressed. I think this position is a tie. I think Bugenhagen actually found a really nice path to a tie here in a complicated position, that there were other ways to a tie, but this one makes kind of a lot of sense in an interesting way. And I'm really pleased when these AIs, where I'm just following their rules, come up with moves that I wouldn't necessarily see or consider. I stuck with the safe move. Not much more to say, other than hoping they messed up from here. Nope, that works just fine. Now, as long as I don't play 4177 in 1, because that's going to get comboed. Tie. That was the slightly more complicated tie, giving them the opportunity to mess up by capturing in 1. It turns out this player is perfect endgame calculation. Sorry, Delhi, the trap doesn't fly here. This is referencing a quote from Delial, where at the end of a game, he picked up a card to play an obvious tie, and then put it down and picked up the other card and played a very weird-looking tie. And Homer asked him, "Why'd you do that?" And Delial said, "Well, they're not going to lose if I don't give them a chance to, right?" And so here, the AIs at a certain point just calculate correctly and aren't going to make any mistakes. From some, that's like move 8 on. From some, that's move 7. From some, that's 6 or 5. So here, the AI was not going to screw up at this point in the game. So some reflections on this game. After seeing the matchups, I felt like the opponent had a slightly stronger hand, and after the way the game played out, I was eventually quite content to see out the tie and go again. Their second move certainly surprised me and could have caught me out, so I was glad to find at least a tie early on while looking for the win that I still think probably wasn't there. So we moved to game 2. Triad Wars 1, round 2, game 2, because they tied the first. This time Bugenhagen's going to go first, but first, Turd's thoughts entering this game. I was never the best at building counter hands. Arguably, I was never the best at building hands full stop, and outside of tournaments, I did play a lot of random. However, seeing the opponent's hand in the last game and the way they played it, I sniffed blood here and picked cards that would be very strong against 7/7s, while knowing he couldn't deal well with 6s, assuming that even if he did change up the hand, it would still contain 7/7 corners. As it happens, he kept it the same. I matched up to his 5/5-3-1-1, meaning those as the levels. The 4/1-7/6 is a bit of a wild card and very strong for a level 3, but I needed more strength down and left, so it felt a good fit. So I had no idea there was a 4/1-7/6 at level 3, or I had forgotten. That is very powerful to have been printed at level 3. That seems like a mistake. Though nothing is as bad as when I was looking at the decks and saw the A991 at level 9 that apparently was printed in the later years. Anyways, 4/1-7/6 I do not think should be allowed at level 3, but a very good find that it was a playable card. I also like the 6/7-6/3s a lot. I think if you look at the jump between level 4 and 5, a lot of the difference is that 5 has these incredibly powerful 6/7-6/3s that are great against 6s, great against 7s. They're also 6/7-6/2s, 6/6-6/3s. There's a lot of just very powerful cards on level 5, and it's part of the reason that level 5 laming was such a prominent thing. And level 5 laming used 6/7-6s a lot more than it used the 7/7 corners. So I fundamentally like the switches in Turd's hands, and I think the 1/4-1/4s are a really nice choice against an opponent that you think is going to overload on 7s. So this to me does look like good changes to the hand. Also, as I said earlier, I think 5/5-3-1-1 is a better way to do this than going with 5/4-3-2-1. There might be an argument for all 3s, but I suspect the power of 5s is worth more than the drop-off from 3 to 1s. And the other thing is half the games you're going to be playing second turn, so half the games you're going to have a card left over in your hand, so the level 1 won't hurt you near as badly. So I think my suspicion, and I'm really curious if other people have different thoughts on this, is that 5/5-3-1-1 is the best build on this rule set. And I would be very surprised if it was something like 4/4-4-2-1. That seems like a really poor build to me, because I think level 4s are significantly weaker than level 5s. Level 2s are significantly weaker than level 3s. You know, a hand like that, I suspect, even though it has more kind of above average level cards, is just not very good for this rule set. So, Bugenhagen begins. A 7/7 corner starter, of course. This time I'm prepared, and I'm happy to hold on to my level 1 cards, knowing that this can go right to the end of the game, and I'll be able to plus wall the starter from one side, and they have no way of setting themselves in 5 to be able to combo the starter back from both sides on their last move, so I have a good chance of pressing that advantage home late on. With that in mind, I knew I wasn't forced to play in 5, and could just force the game away from the corner starter until later. So this is one of those interesting things where if you on second turn can combo their starter from both sides, you can kind of just sit on both of those cards, and whichever they don't have the card for at the end you can play. Well, on first turn, if you have one card that combos it from each side, you kind of have to hold on to both, and then at the end you go, wait up, I have to play one of these, and don't have both left for their last turn. And I think this is kind of a mistake some people made building corner starter hands, is they didn't look for ways to have the other cards in their hand be able to set up their capturing cards to have the captures both ways. Because at some point during the game, if the opponent doesn't come near your starter, you're going to have to set up your starter to be able to or your card. You're often going to have to set up your card to be able to capture both ways. And there are a lot of corner starter hands that I don't think were built quite to do that. And I think it would not have taken that much work to get there. And I think would have been a real improvement to those hands. So Turdz plays in 7. I really like this move. Traditionally, an adjacent corner may be played to cope with a high corner value on the starter, but here I wasn't bothered about that, as I already had the starter covered off. Instead, I realized that they had given up their leftward power with their starter and played a strong defensive move. There was no way they would ever capture that card from 8, and the only ways they could get to it from 4 were if I played the 1-4, 1-4, and 5, which wasn't going to happen. Or they'd set themselves up in 1, which was less of a concern to me, as they had nothing for 8. Even better, if they did play an 8 later in the game, that sets up my combo in 6, while also securing 7 for me. And this is, I think, visibly very difficult for Red to deal with, right? Because if they ever want to block 8, they leave themselves open to combos unless they use their other level 5, and then they have very little power left over. They can't really attack Turdz as starter, so they kind of gotta play something in 1, 2, or 3, but it's not clear which. I would, if I was them, be looking to get one of the low-level cards out of the hand. Occasionally there's an argument for, like, I don't have a move in 8, so I'm going to force you to go in 8 by going in 6, but that looks very unlikely here. But it is an idea that comes up time to time. I would be looking at 1, 2, or 3 if I was Red here, but I would be feeling pretty miserable about this position. So they did play the other 7-7 corner in 1. Not sure if this was to put pressure on the card in 7 or just another defensive move, but it did force me to respond in 4, as I don't have a recapture from 7 from 8 myself, something I considered to not be an issue before making my move. Therefore, at this point the consideration is, which card is best for the slot, or perhaps which card can I most afford to give up? He had a plus wall in 2, so to me it wasn't of any benefit and actually a risk to capture. Decision pretty much made. This move goes against some generally established principles. In a game that is facing down and left, I threw away the best card to suit the directionality of the game. However, in doing so, I kept the 2 level 1 cards that I wanted to save for later, and also made sure I didn't give up 4 to a silly combo. Having played the move out, I knew that 6-7-6-3 was safe in either 2 or 5 against the opposite position. 1-4 and 1-4 and 2 was also strong against 5. And if they played an 8, I had already made plus walls in 2 and 6. I quickly played out some unusual follow-ups in 3 and 6 and thought I found an answer to all of them. This felt like a very strong move. Yeah, I think Turdz played a winning move here. I think this is a win. Red is just left with such weak cards for the endgame, and they're going to have no way to play next to their starter. Because if they ever play next to it, Turdz can combo back, and if they leave it open, they'll only have one of their combo cards at the end, and Turdz just plays in the other combo square, and they're left with nothing. So I think this is a very poor position for Red, and one of those times where using your most powerful cards in these split level sets is just very dangerous to do early, and it's, not always losing or anything, but just very risky. And here Bugenhagen played both his high level cards immediately and is left with, I think, a very tough position. So they play 6-6-3-2 and 2, blocking in at least one card. Got him. Blocking 1 and 2 is very logical in this position, but it gave me 6-7-6-3 and 5 unopposed. From here, they have to use up one of their level 1 cards, and whichever one they choose, I can plus wall the card in 9 from the relevant side without reply. And indeed, this is a winning move. You can check out the lines yourself, but I think the logic of it should be clear even if you're not calculating. So Turdz's reflections on the game. This was an intriguing game, and I feel like I got my hand just right. What I liked about this game is that my first and second move were very situational. Neither of them are moves that I would necessarily recommend for regular play, with the first being something I couldn't recapture from both sides, and the second giving away the directionality that the layout of the board suggests I should have needed. On the contrary, without the 4-1-7-6, this may not have been a win, as I needed to be able to play in 4 without capturing 1, lest I'd fall into the same trap I'd set myself for the starter in 9. I think it worked so well here because it was intended as a counter hand, and having second turn probably favored me. The shape of this game may have followed a quite common formation that plays out from adjacent corner replies, but it certainly didn't play like one. Yeah, I think this was a pretty neat game, and I think you can see Bugenhagen was a significantly stronger opponent than Luca Blight was in the first round. Where his move in 7 in the first game I thought was great, like just a really interesting educational move to see. And this game kind of fell for a classic mistake that very good players have fallen for, of looking for the safety of your power cards and not worrying about too much else. Though here they weren't that safe because Turd's hand was so well built to counter them that they maybe should have been looking for either weak corners or maybe a corner with Forbidden, something Turd's hand wasn't so obviously built to counter, because I think Turd's did a really nice job building a counter hand and Bugenhagen did not adjust for this. So that moves Turdz on to round 3. I think I'm going to end the video with this round, but let's go on to the next slide. We can see the tournament bracket filling out. He's going to face Karen Koenig in round 3. She is from Shadow Hearts 2, which is at the very least one of my 3 favorite games and one that no one seems to have played. You can see Jenna Angel and Mythos Yggdrasil advancing in the other bracket from Digital Double Saga and Tales of Symphonia, respectively. The rule set is going to be level 6 and 8, same plus wall combo, and you must use at least 2 level 6s. And if Turdz wins, he'll make an icon, and if he does not win, he will have gone out in round 3. Will he win? I will leave you in suspense for next time. But I hope it was interesting to get to see the thought process of a very good player. Hopefully some of my thoughts were interesting and I didn't babble too long. And I hope someone watching this goes, I want to play in a tournament like this. I want to play kind of tournament feeling Triple Triad again. You may think the AIs so far were not impressive. I do think they'll find some really good moves, and I think they make for good opponents. And I would really love to sort of run part human, part AI tournaments and, see how it goes. So if you're interested in that, please send me a message, or I'm going to drop this in the Triple Triad Facebook. Say so there, because I think this was a really fun tournament, and I'll make another video soon with round 3, and we'll see where Turdz goes from there. So cheers.